The glass towers of Silicon Valley do not sleep. Even at 3 a.m., the blue light of thousands of servers flickers like a digital heartbeat against the blackened skyline of San Jose. In the heart of this technological forest, the Nexus cybersecurity headquarters stood as a titan of glass and steel, a fortress of data meant to protect the world's most sensitive secrets. It was supposed to be the most secure building on the planet, guarded by biometric scanners, armed patrols, and the world's most expensive firewalls. But while the elite software engineers in their designer hoodies left their desks at sunset, Elias entered. Elias was a man of shadows and silence. Dressed in a dark gray janitor's uniform with property of Nexus embroidered in white thread on the chest, he pushed a heavy industrial cart filled with cleaning chemicals and microfiber cloths. To the hundreds of employees who worked there, Elias was just another immigrant, a nameless face in a low-wage job. They saw the mop, the bucket, and the spray bottle. They never saw the man. They didn't see the man who, 20 years ago, had been a top-tier professor of applied mathematics and cryptography at a prestigious university in Eastern Europe. They didn't see the genius who had published papers on prime number distribution that were still cited in secret government journals. A brutal civil war had forced him to flee with nothing but his life and a tattered notebook. In America, without a social media presence or a flashy degree from Stanford, Elias was invisible. His hands, which had once solved equations that defined modern encryption, now smelled perpetually of lemon bleach and ammonia. The most arrogant of those who ignored him was Marcus Thorne, the 32-year-old CEO of Nexus. Marcus was a man who lived for the headlines. He believed that brilliance was a brand, and wealth was the only true measure of an IQ. He treated the service staff like part of the HVAC system, necessary, but unworthy of a good morning. Marcus was currently under immense pressure. He was preparing for the nationwide rollout of Aegis 10, a revolutionary AI-driven software designed to manage the entire United States electrical grid. It was a multi-billion-dollar government contract that promised to make Marcus the most powerful man in tech. But Marcus had a secret. To ensure a massive profit margin and a recurring revenue stream, he had ordered his lead developers to leave a backdoor, a deliberate, hidden vulnerability in the encryption, so that Nexus could sell exclusive security maintenance for years to come. One rainy Thursday night, as Elias was buffing the floor in the executive boardroom, his eyes caught a glimpse of Marcus's personal monitor. Marcus had left it unlocked, a sprawling architecture of code filling the screen. Most people would have seen a mess of symbols. Elias saw a symphony. But in the middle of that symphony, there was a screeching, discordant note. He moved closer, his heart hammering against his ribs. He wasn't looking at a mistake. He was looking at a masterpiece of corruption. The backdoor was mathematically perfect, elegant, invisible to standard audits, and utterly catastrophic. It was a hole through which any sophisticated hacker could walk and shut down the power to 30 states. Elias tried to be subtle. He knew he couldn't just walk into Marcus's office and explain the flaw. Instead, he used the whiteboard in the corner. He rearranged the colored magnets and drew a series of seemingly random geometric patterns that, when viewed through a cryptographic lens, pointed directly to the leak in the Aegis 10 kernel. The next morning, Marcus walked into the room, saw the markings, and wiped them clean with a frustrated huff. "The cleaning crew is getting sloppy," he muttered to his assistant. "Tell the night supervisor that if the janitor touches the boards again, he's fired." The night of the grand launch arrived. Marcus was at a black tie gala in San Francisco, sipping champagne and accepting awards, while Aegis 10 went live across the nation. In the quiet, high-tech halls of Nexus, Elias felt a change in the atmosphere. It wasn't a sound, but a vibration. The server fans began to scream at high RPMs, a mechanical howl that echoed through the vents. The lights in the hallway began to pulse with an eerie, rhythmic flicker. Elias dropped his mop and ran toward the main control hub. He didn't need a keycard. He knew the maintenance bypass codes that the builders had used during construction. Inside, the wall of monitors was turning a violent shade of red. A massive ransomware attack, originating from the very backdoor Marcus had authorized, was spreading like a digital virus through the national grid. Hospitals were losing power. Emergency networks were crashing. The unbreakable fortress was being looted from the inside. Marcus rushed into the building 30 minutes later, his tuxedo jacket gone, his face pale with terror. His top engineers were gathered around the consoles, their fingers trembling. They were the best in the business, but this was a tier 1 cryptographic lock. The encryption was mutating every 60 seconds. "I'll pay anyone $5 million to break this." Marcus screamed, his voice cracking. "Fix it. If that grid goes down permanently, we're all going to prison." The engineers looked at each other in silence. It was too late. The system was locked. Elias stepped out from the shadows of the utility closet, still holding a spray bottle in his hand. "Move aside, Marcus," he said, his voice dropping the humble, quiet tone he used to stay safe. "You didn't listen to the whiteboard. Now, you have to listen to the math." Marcus turned, his eyes bulging. You? You clean the toilets, Elias. Get out of here before I have you arrested." "I clean your toilets," Elias said, walking toward the master terminal with a calm, terrifying authority, because it was the only job that allowed me to be near the machines I love without being hunted. "Now, you can either watch the country go dark, or you can step back and let me work." Something in Elias's voice, a cold, steel-like certainty, stopped Marcus in his tracks. The billionaire stepped back. Elias sat at the terminal. He didn't use the standard interface. He opened a command line and began typing raw machine code. His fingers flew across the mechanical keyboard with the speed of a concert pianist. To the engineers standing behind him, it looked like he was writing in a forgotten language. He wasn't using Nexus's tools. He was using a prime number sequence based on his own unpublished theorems from 20 years ago. The room went silent, the only sound being the frantic click-clack of the keys. On the screen, the red bars began to retreat. The mutating virus was being cornered. Elias was building a digital cage around it using mathematics that Marcus's engineers didn't even recognize. Seconds before the final kill switch would have permanently fried the nation's transformers, Elias hit the enter key with a sharp, final tap. The monitors turned a cool, steady green. The screaming fans slowed to a whisper. The power grid stabilized. Elias stood up slowly, his joints popping. He wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead with his sleeve and picked up his spray bottle. "The back door is sealed, Marcus. And just so there's no confusion, I forwarded a complete digital audit of the original kernel and your internal memos regarding that vulnerability to the Department of Justice and the FBI. They're already on their way." The silence in the room was absolute. Marcus Thorne sat on the floor, his head in his hands, as the sirens of federal agents began to wail in the parking lot below. A month later, the Nexus headquarters looked the same from the outside, but the internal world had shifted. Elias stood on the stage in the main auditorium. He wasn't wearing gray overalls. He was wearing a simple, well-tailored suit. He had been appointed the new chief technology officer by the Oversight Committee. "We are a company built on code," Elias told the room of thousands of employees. "But code is only as strong as the ethics of the person who writes it. From this day forward, we do not look at pedigrees, we do not look at wealth, and we do not look at titles. We look at the work. Because the most brilliant mind in this building might be the one you've been walking past for 10 years. Elias walked back to his new office, the same office Marcus once held. He looked at the floor-to-ceiling glass windows overlooking the valley. He took out a small microfiber cloth from his desk drawer, leaned over, and buffed out a tiny smudge on the corner of his desk. He was a leader now, but he would never forget the view from the floor. He knew that to truly secure the future, you have to be willing to clean up the messes that power leaves behind.